So let's talk about TOR, because there's a lot of confusion around it. And also, it's a great concept when you want to understand distributed networks and volunteer-led networks and networks that are hard to take down, right? So there's a lot of learning that can happen from TOR. And then in the later part of this series, we'll start getting into distributed networks and decentralized networks. And TOR is a great way to start aligning your brain and start understanding those mental models and those concepts. So you've heard a lot about TOR, and you think that if you just use the TOR browser or the TOR network, everything is all right. And many people think that's a VPN, it's just a VPN, but it's not a VPN. This is like a common confusion on the internet. And it's also not just a proxy server, it's actually much, much more than that. So TOR, and it's also not focused on encryption, right? So TOR is not about encryption of content, right? It's not like any content that you're seeing is encrypted. TLS already does that. And it's not about performance either, because it's much slower to use TOR as compared to if you would use the internet as you usually do. And then it's also not about availability. It's just about one thing, it's unlinkability. So that means an observer who's looking at your behavior on the internet, or your behavior particularly on the TOR network, that observer should not be able to link the source to the destination. That means the source is you and the destination is wherever you want to go on the internet. An observer who's looking at the network traffic should never be able to make that link. Okay, so that's all that TOR is about. It's not about encryption, not about performance, not about availability. It's not a VPN, it's not a proxy server either. Okay, so who are you trying to hide from? Usually your ISP, right? Your ISP is your internet service provider. It sees who you are and where you're connecting. And via the ISP, a lot of other actors like hackers, government agencies, anyone can start snooping on you, right? And we covered this a little bit when we were talking about VPN. So the client uses the regular network. ISP sees everything, who you are, where you're connecting, and the destination server, like whatever website you're viewing. But if you want privacy, you would use something like a multi-hop TOR network. You could use VPN, but like we also learned in the VPN video, it's not as secure as we'd like it to be. So we use the multi-hop TOR network. So you're a client, and there's something called as an entry node, which is also called as the guard node. Okay, and then there's something called as a middle node and exit node. So for now, we look at like more detailed diagrams in a minute, but for now, if you just understood this, right, and then you see this onion as the logo of TOR, that's because it's an onion router. That means you're going through multiple hops just to be more secure. So that's why if someone is looking at the network traffic here, they're thinking, oh, it's coming from a much deeper layer, that's coming from a much deeper layer, because having all these hops. And there's like an entry node, middle node, and an exit node. So no single node sees both your identity and your destination. So this node does not know your final destination, and this node does not know your identity, for example. And this node definitely doesn't know your identity, but knows your destination. So there is no single node that knows both your identity and your destination. Okay, and you use multi-hop routing, which usually entails 3 hops, and each hop knows only its previous and its next peer. So the middle node just knows where the traffic is coming from, where it's going to the next node, but it doesn't know the actual client or the source of the traffic. Okay, so it's layered encryption, which also means onion routing. Now we look at more detailed diagrams which actually show how it works. So the early TOR used to use random entry nodes, right? So these entry nodes used to be random, but what we realized was that if you rotate these entry nodes too often, eventually you pick a malicious one. And this leads to long-term de-anonymization risk. That's why the TOR network now uses a small, stable set of guard nodes only, which have been vetted, carefully vetted. So how does the TOR network actually work? So if you follow through this, this is the start, which is the source of the traffic. You hit a few middle nodes, and then this is the exit node, after which you have the unencrypted connection. So you have the encrypted connection going here. It's all encrypted. Just the final leg, which is from the exit node to the target node, is unencrypted. So the people running the exit nodes, right? So all of these servers are being run by volunteers. So people willingly go and run these nodes on the internet for TOR, for the TOR network. And the people running the exit nodes are the most at risk, because this is where all the traffic is going unencrypted to the target. Okay, very few people talk about it, but this actually has the highest risk, and everyone in the Tor network wants there to be a lot of exit servers, but there aren't enough exit servers because there's not enough incentive to become the exit server in a Tor network. All right, so this diagram will help us visualize the whole network in a much better way. So this is Emilia's computer, and she's connected to the Tor network, which has a lot of different peers and nodes, and we can't know for sure where the entry guard node is going to forward her traffic. And ideally, it should be 3 hops, and where those 3 hops are going to happen, right? So it gets forwarded here, from here to here, from here to here, directly to the exit. So those 3 hops happened here. So you can't really predict where the traffic is going to go. Now, this diagram shows something called as lemon heads, which are independent public viewers, and they're looking at the traffic going from here, here, and here. So they can look at the traffic between different servers. This is what lemon heads can do. These are, you can think of them as public observers or people who are wanting to snoop into the network. So public observers can only see some details, even if they have the visibility on the entire global network. So let's say this lemon head has the visibility on the entire global network of Tor, they still won't be able to track an individual's request and how it got routed. So they can see globally how requests are going between the servers, but they don't know which person's request was it, which went to this server, this server, this server, and finally to the destination. Now, we've already learned the Diffie-Hellman algorithm in one of the previous videos. By the way, if you're not aware, this video is part of a long series on system design concepts. If you haven't seen the other videos, you might want to check out this entire playlist. All right, so we have Emilia's computer, and she is generating a private key, public keys, calculating A is equal to G raised to A mod P. We've seen this in Diffie-Hellman, and we calculate our function. We've also sent these AGP values where the entry node creates its own private key, calculates G raised to B mod P and also its own function, and KN1 is same in both cases, and that's how the key exchange has happened. Now, an important thing to understand here, because we're on video number 40, and this is an important thing to understand, is that in system design, you'll notice that we always value low latency, right? We haven't learned about latency yet. We will in the future videos, but by working in engineering, you know what latency is. It's like the delay, right? And we always value low latency in system design, but Tor goes against it, and Tor deliberately sacrifices performance, right? So you add latency, you add multiple hops, there's cryptography at each hop, and there's also congestion in the communication between these nodes in the network. And you have these volunteer operated relays, and finally you have rate limited exits from the exit node to the destination. So what I'm trying to show you here is that there are use cases where people are willing to sacrifice performance for privacy, security, and all such goals. So in system design, low latency is not the only goal. It is a great goal. It's a goal that's pursued most of the times, but it's not the only goal. In some systems, you might want privacy, more availability, you might want security, right? And you might sacrifice latency for that, and that's completely all right. And this is why it's important to understand the context and the use cases for each technology while designing a system, rather than just optimizing for low latency. This is what differentiates a great system design person from a not so great system design person, right? So another important thing is, because a lot of people think Tor is a silver bullet. So Tor is not a silver bullet. It does not protect against global traffic correlation. So if you are something like the NSA, right, you have all the resources on the planet, you could essentially set up global traffic correlation, and they have very advanced algorithms and AI and all of that. So they can obviously come to know what you're up to. And there are timing attacks at scale. There's browser fingerprinting, the browser from which you're viewing everything. All of that can be tracked. Any mistakes that you make, logins, cookies, all of that. So it doesn't protect you from that. So Tor protects transport anonymity, not application layer anonymity. So it's not a silver bullet. It's just a layer towards privacy. It's not the end all for privacy and security. Now, we did talk about unlinkability in the beginning, and it's important to not conflate that with invisibility. So Tor does not make you invisible. It just makes attribution very expensive. It does not make it impossible. It just makes it expensive. So only very determined people with a lot of resources can do something like a timing attack at scale or a global traffic correlation, and only they would be able to find out what you're up to. Otherwise, it's just very expensive to attribute the traffic coming into the Tor network. Just want to take a quick break to tell you something important. If you have some years of experience in the industry, you know that just knowing system design concepts is not enough. You need to know how to break down complex problems and apply all of the concepts that you know. Now, there are many system design courses on the internet, but they break down simple problems like e-commerce platforms, social media platforms. But what about someone breaking down OpenAI or Hugging Face or Cursor, the kind of platforms that will be built in 2025 and beyond? And this is why I've built the perfect 3-month advanced system design bootcamp, where you break down distributed systems problems, decentralized platforms problems, and AI infrastructure problems. This cohort is for more advanced people who have a few years in the industry, they know quite a lot of system design, and are now looking to upskill. If you think you're a good fit, there's a form in the comments and in the description of this video. Fill it up. We'll check if you're a good fit, and we'll set up some time with you. Now let's get back to the video. So just because this topic is so interesting and it confuses a lot of people, we'll just quickly go over some characteristics for TOR. So it is an overlay network. That means TOR does not replace the internet. So you might think it's its own network, right? It's its own servers. Volunteers are putting their own servers on the network. So is it a replacement for the internet? No, it's not. It's just running on top of it. So it uses TCP/IP, uses the existing ISPs, using the existing routers. Everything is the same. You don't have to have a completely different replacement. It just adds its own routing logic at the application layer. This is something called as an overlay network. We'll talk about that later also in this series, but it's great that we touched upon this right now and you now understand what an overlay network is, because I'll refer to this in one of the later videos as well. The anonymity is probabilistic. So it does not guarantee absolute anonymity, right? It just guarantees that the de-anonymization requires controlling or observing multiple specific points at the same time, which is what I mentioned earlier, that it's highly expensive. Correlation is highly expensive. And certainty is unlikely, and attribution is only probabilistic. Because TOR is built in such a way that it assumes that some nodes will be malicious, some traffic will be observed, and some users will be sloppy. But it still kind of tries to cover all of that and makes this difficult to link. So just as a visual, this is what a regular underlay network looks like. This is what an overlay network on top of it looks like. It's the same thing, it's just an overlay link. And this one visualizes a correlator, which is looking at all the traffic from all the onion nodes and then correlating everything. It just makes it difficult to correlate and link the traffic unless the correlator has a lot of resources. Now, TOR also has key rotation. So it's rotating session keys, circuit keys, and encryption layers per hop. Every single hop that happen between the servers, we talked about the 3 hops, right? So we have encryption layers per hop. So keys themselves are ephemeral, they're short-lived, and they're never reused across circuits. So if a key leaks, a node is compromised, traffic is recorded. The key rotation ensures at least that the past traffic stays protected. Now this thing, we also talked about it in Diffie-Hellman, and it's called as forward secrecy. I'll talk about it in a video that's dedicated just to forward secrecy. It'll be a short video, maybe 2-3 minutes, but I want you to understand what that concept is. So just keep that thought aside for now. And future traffic is isolated, past traffic stays protected. Now future traffic, that's something else. We'll talk about that much later in the series. And blast radius. Now blast radius is another concept that'll have its own little video. Okay. So essentially what you need to understand is what's happening here is that essentially because we are rotating all these keys, it just makes it harder for someone to attack this network or attack an individual in the network, right? So this diagram visualizes all this key rotation happening at multiple layers and also at each hop. Now let's talk about the circuit lifetimes of TOR network. So the circuits live for minutes, not hours, are rebuilt periodically, always, and they change paths over time. So you can't predict in a network how the traffic is going to flow. The traffic is going to keep changing, and the network is going to keep changing paths over time. So long-lived paths enable traffic correlation, behavior profiling, long-term observation. Short-lived circuits, they break correlation, they reduce statistical confidence, and they force attackers to re-observe all the time. So essentially, if you want a simpler version of it, is that you don't know if the traffic is going to go like this, or going to go like this, or going to go like this from here to here. So it's all going to change periodically, and this just makes it very difficult to track. TOR networks are partial trust systems, so it assumes that some relays are malicious, some exits are hostile, some directories could be attacked. So what does this mean? This means that you don't trust the person who's running the exit node, and that could be someone from outside the network, someone who has an incentive to actually catch someone who's part of the network, who's using TOR for their own benefit. So if the exit node is hostile, still being a partial trust system ensures that you don't trust the exit node completely. Okay, so security comes from splitting the knowledge and not giving all the knowledge to every single node, compartmentalization and least information exposure, right? So if the exit node is hostile, what happens here is that we were not trusting the exit node anyway, right? So we learned earlier that each hop only knows its previous and next peer. That means the exit node only knows where the traffic is coming from in terms of the previous node. It does not know the actual source of the traffic. And this is why we don't trust any node completely in this network, because we don't know which node is hostile. And it also has something called as adversarial system design. TOR is designed assuming active attackers, adaptive attackers, and nation state attackers. Adversarial system design is something that you work with if you are into security architecture. If you're not, then maybe this is not that important for you, but we will be talking about it in a different playlist or in a different video later on. So this diagram was helping us visualize the TOR circuits and how they live on. And then this one was helping us visualize how the knowledge is split, and that for at each stage you can calculate trust, and you don't completely trust one node in the entire system. And also this diagram helps us visualize the adversarial system design, which is the eavesdropper always checking the system for any weak points. All right, so this was an interesting video, and this flows in really well after VPN and SSH, which is just what we learned, right? So now you know about TOR with much more clarity. The whole point of me covering TOR in the system design concept series is because this helps us get started with distributed systems, distributed thinking, and thinking about how networks can work without trusting each other, how we don't share all the information with one network, and also volunteer-led networks. All of this will be helpful much later on in this playlist. When we talk about distributed systems, decentralized systems, and we talk about consensus, all those concepts are a little bit more advanced. They take some time to understand. So it's better we got started right now. Now there's a lot of ground we need to cover before we actually reach there, but we're at least getting started. All right, I'll see you in the next video.